Event freelancers, welcome to your new community, connecting you to your next project. Get connected. Sign up now. It's free.
So next up, we're talking about insurance. Maybe not the most exciting subject for some, but I'm sure we'd all benefit from understanding it better. Which ones do we need and how much? What are you covered for and what do you need to do to claim? Create Insurance was set up to provide insurance specifically for creative freelancers, and we're working with them at Connektd to understand the needs of the industry. And Luke Perkins from Create is going to be talking to us today to answer these questions and more. This is quite a short session at 20 minutes and it's quite fast paced. There's a lot of information. So get your piece of paper and your pen ready to take some notes, but it will be shared. The contact details for Luke will be shared during the session. So it's very easy to contact them afterwards to answer all your questions. So this is a pre-record. Over to Luke.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining our webinar today. We are an insurance broker specialising in insurance services to the freelance marketing sector as a whole, including a lot of trades within the event freelancing kind of sector as a broad stroke. We cover over 250 different trades, so more than likely we'll be able to help you. So this presentation is really just a simple kind of very entry-level run-through guide of what is insurance, covering the very basics, the fundamentals you should consider. Throughout the whole thing, my email address will be, the email address will be at the bottom of the screen. If you wish to get in contact, ask us any question, no matter how big, how small, how silly, feel free to get in contact and we'll be happy to take it offline and have a conversation with you. It's just about trying to provide the additional support that you guys need to kind of be the best you can. So, first slide, we've got the agenda. Types of insurance, we'll start with what is public liability, what is employer's liability, property cover, and then also professional indemnity, which is the big one. Now, for us, professional indemnity is very important, especially for the people in the events sector. We wanted to bring some claims examples to the table, and then we want to finish with top tips. So, something you can walk away with, something you can implement to, do your job as best you can, and also mitigate against certain risks or certain issues you may face as an events freelancer. So starting with the fundamental building block of any good insurance policy is public liability. So this covers you against accidental injury to third parties or damage caused to third party property. And this includes the defence costs involved. Now, you'll hear me mention defence costs quite a bit throughout this presentation. Now, defence costs are your legal representation, the solicitor's fees, and they get expensive very quickly. If you're anything like me, you don't want to be paying those kind of solicitor fees. So the insurance policy helps with that a lot. Now, public liability, in a simple sense, is if you're out in the public anywhere or at an event, you plug in your laptop charger, someone walks across and trips over your charging cable, sprains their wrist or sprains an ankle, hurts their shoulder, they could, in theory, bring a claim against you because you've caused them injury. It's your fault. Your cable was there. You didn't tape it down to the floor properly. They've then tripped over. There's an injury cost and then solicitor's costs that they want to bring against you. Now, that can spiral quite quickly. Some of the personal injury claims, those, ambulance chasers, they'll represent those people, and it can get quite expensive quite quickly. So public liability is fundamentally should be on pretty much everyone's insurance policy and plays a fundamental part for ours. So the next slide is about employer's liability. So employer's liability is extremely important to have, but you're probably thinking, well, I don't employ anyone, so how is that actually relatable to me? I'm a freelancer, other freelancers. Now, it is quite a contentious issue, so we kind of wanted to bring this to the table. You might not need it, you might need it, but hopefully this provides some more clarity. So in theory, it's It is a legal requirement if you do have employees, even if it's one part-time employee, you should have employer's liability. It's a legal responsibility for you to have that. On our policy, so all of this conversation is around talking about our insurance policies. Each insurance policy is different, so speak to your provider at the time. But on our policy, it does cover volunteers. So if you are hosting an event and you've got someone that's just helping you out, it could be a friend, it could be a family member. If you're telling them to do something and you're therefore responsible for their actions and they're injured, potentially that could be an employer's liability claim. Using other freelancers or contractors is where it gets a little bit complicated. Want to kind of bring this to your attention just so you understand what happens in the event if you are using freelancers. And you are telling them what to do and they're under your guidance, then employer's liability actually is something you should be considering. A simple way to explain this is really with the example of if you're an event organizer and you're using volunteer marshals to help you manage the day, a volunteer is injured when moving a metal barrier and the event organizer receives a personal injury claim against them, then that's the kind of essence of what could happen. They've moved something, you've told them to put something from one side of the room to the other, and then they get injured, then they could bring that against you as the employer as such, even though that you're not paying them, but they are your responsibility while they're doing work for you. So really important and one of the fundamentals. The last fundamental part of the insurance policy is your property cover. So 3 different elements, very simple, probably very easily relatable, kind of similar to your house insurance and your contents insurance in your accommodation. Portable equipment, so that's anything that leaves the property. So exhibition equipment, hide-in equipment, cameras, lighting, rigs, displays, projectors, microphone packs and sound equipment, anything that is moving around the country or potentially the world, you should consider this cover. Contents, tables, desks, chairs, anything. If you tip upside down your property, and then whatever falls out would be classed as contents. So if you have a studio or you rent a small office location and those items never leave that area, that premises, then you should consider contents. And then buildings, as you grow, you might want to buy a building or buy an office policy, or your lease might suggest that you're responsible for the insurance of those buildings. Anything that didn't fall out of your property would be classed as buildings. So pretty in that sense, very relatable. The biggie insurance. Now, what is it? You've probably all heard of it. You've probably been told that you should have it, but actually, how does it work and what happens? So in essence, anyone who provides a professional service brought against them by a client. So you'll provide professional services, giving them advice, and then they action that advice, and then they lose. They have a negative financial impact on their followed your advice. They could potentially bring that against you. Now, sole traders, freelancers, contractors, including limited companies, limited liability, no matter how small or big you are, you should have professional indemnity in place if you're providing any type of professional services. Now, just because your turnover is, say, £30,000 a year, it still means that you could still have a claim of, say, £200,000 a year. It doesn't really relate directly to your income, but it's something that you can use as a benchmark, but you should always consider it. If anything, the smaller freelancers and contractors will actually have more of a need for this, because you're not protected by a big business, you're not limited by guarantee, and also you don't have a HR legal team that can represent you and issue emails back. You're busy working, you might overlook an email from a client that's complaining, and that escalates without you even seeing it. So for us, very, very important. But for clarity as well, you don't need to charge a fee for the client to bring a case against you. You could provide advice as part of a pitch for a piece of work, or you're just giving general advice to someone, trying to help them. They then action it and actually have a financial loss on the back of it. You didn't earn any money out of it, but you still have an exposure as an individual and as a business. It's very important. So we wanted to bring to your attention the various different types of examples that could be brought against you. Now, this list is endless. You'll see some of the figures on there: £20,000, £22,500, £3,200. And you're probably thinking, God, £20,000, how can that happen? How does that escalate so much? My income over the year is only £50,000. Well, with professional indemnity, a lot of the cost comes from the solicitor's fees. And actually, a lot of the time, the solicitor's fees and legal representation that you incur are actually higher than any potential payout. You might not have to pay out anything, but to decide, do you have to still need to have legal representation to get to that positive? So we'll go through these individually to kind of bring these to life. The exhibition designer and the manufacturer builds it to spec, so they've built it all quite far down the line, and then upon construction they've realized that actually the measurements are incorrect, and is required to be completely redesigned by yourself and then completely remanufactured and built again. Hopefully by this stage you'd be able to find out actually there's been an error and it's cross-checked along the way, but we're all human, small organizations, we're all busy. If something is overlooked, this could happen. The insurance company paid out £20,000 in this example. So there was legal representation involved because the client brought a case against yourself, for example, that was unhappy with the service and said the manufacturing company said, oh, you're going to pay us £10,000 to rebuild this again, but they've already paid once, so they're paying twice for no additional kind of products. So the insurance companies paid for the solicitor's fees, but then also paid for the remanufacture of that stand exhibition. Quite a big chunk of money, but it escalates quite quickly. And that client was quite small. The second example, producer sued by an image owner for using unlicensed pictures on a client's website. Producer sued by the client after being sued by the copyright owner. So quite a convoluted way, there's a couple of different processes involved in there. But in essence, what happens is you provided a service to your client, you've used a certain image, your client then receives a letter from the copyright owner of that image saying you haven't paid copyright, you haven't asked permission to use this, therefore I'm bringing a claim against you. Your client turns around and says, well, that's nothing to do with me, I didn't design this website. You did as a freelancer. That claim is then passed directly to you. Now, there's solicitor's fees involved throughout, so the claimant, your client, and now you are all paying solicitor's fees, which they'll want paid. They'll want some kind of money back on that. But then also, what often happens is that you'll then have to pay for the copyright then, but the copyright after the event has happened is normally a lot more in terms of the cost, compared to if you would have asked for it beforehand, before you design that website. And we see that quite a lot, but the insurers pay for the legal representation and then also the additional cost of the copyright. So say if you only had it UK and EU and actually you need worldwide copyright, that's taken into consideration and paid the difference. The last one, creative director sued by their client for leaking information about a product before the launch event. Now, so with this, you're working quite hard with your client, you've accidentally forwarded an email to someone else containing information that was to do with the launch about a certain product that your client spent a couple of years kind of designing and putting into manufacture. On the back of that, your client, let's say Nike, for example, want to sue you for loss of earnings or loss of potential profit or sales because you have preempted the launch event in a degree. That means then you're providing solicitor's fees, you've got to have legal representation to negotiate how much should be paid, and not to take it further and further and escalate the process. Your insurers and solicitors will negotiate directly with your client, but they also try to maintain the relationship. So it's an honest mistake that you've made, and the insurers will understand that you want to potentially retain this client to get future business. This doesn't have to be the end of it just because solicitors are involved. So then therefore they've negotiated that keeps something that keeps the client happy, gets you back in good stead with the client, with your ability to do work in the future. So element of loss of sales, and then also the solicitor's fees incurred, which equals the £3,200. Now for the top tips, so we wanted to make sure that this is an entry level, very simple guide 101. What is insurance? Now, obviously, if you've got any questions throughout, just email the email address at the bottom of each slide, which is hello@createinsurance. We'd always be happy to have a conversation with you, even if it's loosely linked to insurance. We are a specialist in the sector. We understand the kind of processes that you guys go through, and I promise you, the query that you have, we've probably heard it 100 times from our many different clients. So these are a list that we've created on the back of working with clients to help understand what's gone wrong in a claims process, and what they can do differently to help mitigate any potential losses in the future and reduce your risk. So one of the main things that links directly to professional indemnity that we've just gone through is always having your scope of work and the project drawn out in writing before you do anything. We're always keen to please, we always want to jump on an exciting piece of work straight away, but what happens under professional indemnity, in essence, if there's a contract dispute of any kind with your clients, or your clients coming to you saying, thanks for delivering this piece of work, but that's not what I asked for. You haven't listened to the brief and you've gone off and done your own thing. So therefore, I'm not actually going to pay you the outstanding balance of, say, £5,000 as an example. Now, with that, the insurers will look at what you have done and what work you have provided and what was agreed. How did that contract come around? Well, the contract, verbal contracts do stand, but they're very hard to prove. So even if you just follow up in an email saying, thanks for the conversation, here's my notes, this is what you're asking and this is what I'm going to go and deliver. And then you can use that as a point of reference. Very basic, but we do see a lot of our clients kind of overstepping that initial stage of working out what we're going to do for each other. The second one is to do with your property, especially the portable equipment. Now, this is, again, directly taken from our existing client base with the type of claims that we're seeing from our clients. Protect your equipment like it was cash. Never leave your equipment unattended or not secure. So many of the times we've had a couple of different claims come in from people being out on a shoot all day, hiding, say, £10,000–15,000 worth of camera equipment. So not a huge amount of money, but they've left it in their car overnight rather than taking it up to the hotel room or bringing it back in the house because they've got back late, which we understand it's not the most easy to take out all the equipment and load up the vehicle if you're out, get back at 11, you back out the next morning at 6. However, if you were to have £10,000 or £15,000 worth of cash in a big suitcase in your car, nobody in their right mind, and that's your cash, you wouldn't leave that in your car overnight. You'd take it back inside and do it. Property should be taken in exactly the same way, because an insurer will be paying out the cash, not the replacement value potentially. So they'll be paying out the money to go buy that equipment again. So always protect your equipment like it was cash. Always bring it with you. Make sure it's left in a locked room during the day, and make sure you are keeping it secure. The third one, so engage with your insurance broker early when hiring in additional equipment. So a lot of our customers will hire in specialist camera equipment or specialist event equipment, AV equipment that is too expensive to buy, and they don't use it enough to warrant purchasing it, and they just hire it on an event by an event basis, which is great. However, it's hard when we get a phone call at 4:30 in the afternoon on a Friday, and you want to have this, you're picking up on Saturday and the event's Saturday afternoon, and you want that equipment covered. So if you're hiring, say, £50,000 or £100,000 worth of equipment, we'll have a couple additional questions. Nothing too onerous, what you're doing with it, what type of equipment it is, how you're going to transport it. But then equally, what we can do, if you engage with us early or with your insurance broker early, they'll be able to tell you how much it's going to cost to add on that additional piece of equipment or selection of equipment for the day or the week's cover, whatever you may need. Once you know the cost early on, then you can build that into your presentation or in your pitch and part of your pricing guide, which will help kind of make sure you earn the right money and you're not losing money paying for insurance when it should be going into your pocket. So speak to us really early. We can tell you exactly how much it's going to cost and ask the questions which we may need answered for the higher value pieces of equipment. Fourth one, so if you get a letter and the client's a bit unhappy, or you get an email and the client's unhappy, and you pick up the phone, speak to your insurance broker. They have trained solicitors there. They will help you through this process. They will guide you through an initial response, and they'll highlight, well, this is actually a bit of a concern. We'll keep an eye on it, keep in contact, forward us emails, and it saves you paying out for solicitors' costs because you're using the insurance provided. The insurers will provide solicitors, and therefore you're not incurring costs and managing the process throughout, which allows you to concentrate on your job and carry on going and doing what you do best. The last one, working in areas open to the public, always carry out a risk or review a risk assessment. Very, very simple. We actually have risk assessment templates that we're happy to provide to our customers, but also prospective clients as well. If you get in contact via that email address and just explain what event you're doing, we can provide a risk assessment template that you can then fill in, which will help identify various different risk factors. And you'll be able to know, I've understood that that's a trip hazard, so I've laid tape down. And say, for example, if a claim is brought against you, at least you'll be able to see, you'll be able to note down that I did try and mitigate it, and it was just a pure accident, and I wasn't at fault. I did everything I could. Hopefully that was useful. Hopefully you found that quite interesting in terms of 101 guide, entry level. Lastly, we are currently running a survey. If you visit createinsurance.co.uk/events to enter, we just want to find out kind of what things you value as a professional, and what services you would like to consider in the future to help us partner with the best businesses out in the country. And then also we are doing a prize draw for everyone who's entered, a £50 Amazon voucher as part of that. So again, thank you for your time. My contact details are on the screen, email address has been in there throughout. Drop me an email if you wish to have further conversations, and we'd be happy to help and hopefully speak to you all soon. Thanks very much.
Event freelancers, welcome to your new community, connecting you to your next project. Get connected. Sign up now. It's free.